My name is Juan Carlos Gamarra. I'm the ambassador of Peru to the United Kingdom. And continuing with our cycle of bicentennial dialogues, I'm pleased to once again be with Silvia Escanilla Huerta, who will talk to us today about the battles of Junín and Ayacucho. Silvia received her bachelor's degree from the University of Buenos Aires in 2008 and has a master's degree from the University of San Andres in Buenos Aires. She is now completing her doctoral dissertation at the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, proposing a new interpretation of the process of independence in Peru between 1783 and 1828. She has edited a book and published several articles on her proposal and has also conducted research on numerous archives in Argentina, Peru, Bolivia, and Spain. Currently, she is the 2020-2021 Research Fellow at the Institute of Research in Humanities at the University of Illinois. Once again, Silvia, thank you for joining us, and please start your remarks.
Thank you for having me. So today we're going to talk about the Battle of Ayacucho that we commemorate, and it's important to commemorate the Battle of Ayacucho because that is the last. Technically, it's not because, I will go into that, but it is the one battle where the independentist forces led by Simón Bolívar and actually by his lieutenant Antonio José Sucre, those forces defeated Viceroy José de la Serna, and he signed the capitulation. Actually, his second, José de Canterac, signed the capitulation on December 9th, 1824. So it was the official end of not only the War of Independence in Peru, but also in general, is the battle that ensured independence for the rest of South America. So it officially ended the wars of independence in general for the whole region, and that's why it's so important. Although there were some remnants of royalist forces that continued, and some supporters who continued fighting well into 1825 and 1826. But the Battle of Ayacucho is the one battle that ended officially the Viceroyalty of Peru and Spanish domination in Peru, and that's why we commemorate it. And it's interesting how we got to the point of Ayacucho, because by the beginning of 1824, the battle was at the end of that year. By the beginning of 1824, it wasn't very obvious or clear that the independentist forces would win the war. On the contrary, I mean, there have been a lot of issues. San Martin had left the Viceroyalty of Peru mid-1822, and throughout 1823 there have been different, the Congress that San Martin organized had trouble, having some sort of agreement into how they would govern Peru, what shape it would take, what kind of government. There were a lot of different sides. Basically the people who were part of the Congress were divided, and it ended up in two sides: one Bernardo José de Tagle, and the other one José de la Riva Agüero. And in fact, the independentist government, which was controlling the center and the north of the Viceroyalty, they, at some point during 1823, there were two independentist governments. And on the side of the royalist forces, the Viceroyalty of Peru was still controlling most of southern Peru, and they had actually been very successful, militarily speaking, because they had inflicted tough losses on the independentist forces in Ica, Torata, Moquegua, and Puno. In Puno. So they were actually technically winning the war. But what happened is that in this context of disarray on the independentist side and successful military campaigns on the royalist side, at the beginning of 1824, the royalist forces got divided because the General Olañeta and the army of Upper Peru revolted against the government of Viceroy La Serna, because the constitutional government had failed in Spain. Ferdinand VII returned to absolutist power, and so there was a division, political division within the royalist forces. That debilitated the royalist side quite a bit, and they actually fought each other, which kind of created a situation in which it was the royal army that was decimated by their own internal divisions. In this context, Simón Bolívar had been requested to, the Peruvian Congress had asked Bolívar to come and join the independentist forces. He came at the end of 1823, and seeing the issues that the royalists had, he actually reorganized the independentist forces, and they moved to Jauja first and then to Junín, and they defeated the royalist forces on August 6, 1824. It is important to say that the independentist forces had a boost because the regiments from Gran Colombia reinforced the independentist forces, and so that really helped the independentist side to battle, let's say, and win over the counterattack forces in Junín. They actually continue going down south, but they stopped in Cusco and did not battle there. The reason is that La Serna thought that his forces were not ready to battle, and on the side of Bolívar, he also was trying to reorganize his forces, so they stopped right outside of Cusco, and they did not battle there, but they did it in Ayacucho. And basically what happened is that the royalist forces decided to strike first, and on December 3rd, they actually they had the Battle of Corpaguayco, in which they surprised on the rear guard of the independentist forces, and they inflicted quite a big loss on them. But Sucre basically was able to reorganize, to leave the area and reorganize his army, whereas the royalists consumed the resources in this war of movement without really achieving a very decisive victory. And so because of the harsh conditions of the campaign in the Andean range, both armies were feeling the effects of the lack of basically food and provisions, and they were fearing desertion of his soldiers. That's the reason why the royalist commanders actually decided to continue pressuring to see if they could inflict a fast, go fast and defeat the independentist forces, but it actually backfired. And it basically, they actually attacked on the morning, early hours of December 9th, 1824. But because the royalist army was, what was left of it was soldiers that were very inexperienced, and they could not keep the organization and discipline that was necessary in battle. As soon as they attacked, they scattered, and once they received enemy fire, they actually fled, and while the battle was raging, and that's why very quickly the battle was over. By 1 p.m. of that day, the viceroy actually had been wounded and taken prisoner, and many of his officers. And it was actually his second, Jose de Canterac, who continued fighting, but it was eventually decided to stop fighting and accept the defeat. And by the afternoon of December 9th, 1824, they signed the capitulation, and they accepted that the independentist forces had won the War of Independence.
Very interesting, thank you. I was just wondering how many people were involved in the forces in Junín and in Ayacucho, and how many on each side? Because I was wondering whether these battles were the same size, for instance, involved the same amount of people as the famous battles that we've heard of here in Europe or in America.
Yeah, they were quite. Yeah, the comparison, it really doesn't stand, because Napoleonic forces, for example, had hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Here in Spanish America, the situation was quite different because of how steep and difficult the terrain is. So it was never possible to organize these big, large regiments. Also, the conditions in which these people were recruited were also different. But we're talking about in the Battle of Junín around 6,000 people on each side, 6,000 soldiers. And then in Ayacucho, it was a clear advantage on the royalist side. They had around between 7,000 and 9,000 men, whereas the independentist side had between 6,000 and 8,000. It's not very clear. There are different sources, and they contradict each other, so we don't really know how many people they were. And the reason why they contradict each other is because they recruited people last minute, mostly peasants, indigenous people, and so it was difficult. They would call their curacas, their caciques, their leaders, and their leaders would bring what they would call la indiada, which was an indefinite number of people. They could not know how many they were, and so that's why there is not a clear estimate. But it was what we know for sure is that the independentist side had less men, less soldiers than the royalist side.
And how about losses?
It was pretty bad on the royalist side because of the inexperience and because of how things happened. I mean, they attacked, but they were surrounded by the independentist forces. This happened in a very open area, in a flat area called Pampa de Quinoa. They lost around 1,800 people. It was a severe loss, whereas on the independentist side, there were no more than 350 or 400. It was really bad on the royalist side. That also created it was a shock and helped secure the defeat.
Thank you very much, Silvia. Very interesting. I hope
You're welcome.
Will be able to help us one day and give a conference here in London.
Sure, anytime.
Thank you.